Each season, summer, fall, and winter, spring, the Loft schedules a huge variety of writing classes. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a teaching artist who specializes in creative nonfiction, Tony Jones. Tony, could you introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved with the Loft?
Hey, sure, Savannah. Thanks for chatting today. I am a writer, and what else do I do? I'm a theologian and a podcaster, and kind of an outdoorsy guy. Spend a lot of time outdoors and a lot of time writing about the outdoors. Live in Edina, Minnesota, where I live like a lot of people in Edina, about a block from where I grew up, which is maybe a little creepy. I got involved in the Loft. I mean, as a Twin Cities based writer, I've been like in love with, impressed by the Loft, like bragged about how great the Twin Cities is because of the presence of the Loft. And I'd done some classes at the Loft, and also actually had like business meetings when I worked for a publisher downtown. We would often rent space at the Loft to get out of the offices and like have a change of venue that was literary in its like aura. And then, yeah, for teaching at the Loft, I just pitched a class last year that was based kind of around. I did some research on what kind of stuff the Loft was offering, and I saw kind of a gap of something I could offer that was a little different than anything that had been taught recently. And so I pitched it, and yeah, you all said, let's do it.
You mentioned a handful of interests that you have and a handful of ways that you label yourself. How do you see all of these different areas of expertise, I suppose, coming together to inform your writing?
Boy, I think I'm 52 years old. I've been thinking a lot about what informs my writing, and it's been quite an interesting journey. I have kids who are currently in college, and I'm always telling them like, you have no idea what you're going to be doing when you're 52. With 30 years from now, you have no idea. They're so, where should I go to grad school? It's going to determine the future of my life. And I graduated from college and went straight to seminary because I just knew I was supposed to be a pastor. That was my life goal. And even by the time I graduated from seminary, I had some questions about that. And then I spent about 10 years um, in like ministry full time. Then I went and got a PhD, and then I was kind of like a freelance speaker and ran around the world giving talks and writing books. And then I spent 10 years working at a publishing house, on two different sides of the publishing house. And so now I'm again freelance and spend most of my day writing and thinking about writing. And all those experiences, everything I've done since I graduated from college has informed the kind of writing I do. And then hopefully what I can bring to people who sign up for my Loft classes.
In the class that you're teaching coming up here, it focuses both on the craft and the publishing aspect of memoir. Obviously, you're a writer and you've worked in publishing. So, could you talk a little bit about how you approach both those topics in the classroom?
Yeah, for sure. I really hope that my class on memoir, it's really, my class is about being able to write kind of creative nonfiction in the first person. It may be in ways that aren't like strictly memoir. Okay. So I do a lot of writing for like the Minneapolis Star Tribune, the daily newspaper here in Minneapolis. And I write um, stories usually for the outdoor section about different things I've done, like a hunting trip, or I've written quite a bit about the boundary canoeing in the boundary waters. And you don't see a lot of personal first person type writing in a daily newspaper, but that's the type of writing I do even for the Star Tribune. So because I really have a passion for, I want readers to feel personally involved in the narrative, even if it's a news type narrative. So all that to say, in the classroom, I want to challenge and inspire writers and aspiring writers to think about ways they can invest themselves in the stories that they're telling. In a lot, because in a lot of mediums like daily newspapers, that's kind of frowned upon. But I think if you make the case for how compelling the narrative can be, if you're invested in it as the writer and you invite the reader to be invested in it too, um, I think you can have a lot of success writing that way. And then the other thing you also mentioned is that just because of my experience, like in the publishing world, for instance, as an acquisitions editor, and I've been the general editor on several book series, and I've written my own books, um, I hope I hope I can also bring a lot of very practical advice to aspiring writers, like how do you write a proposal? How do you pitch an editor? Like, how much should your book advance be? I mean, all that stuff I'm constantly coaching writers on just personally. So in the class, then I also want, I don't just want it to be pie in the sky. Like writing is just the greatest thing in the world, but it's also like you got to figure out how people are going to read your writing, and that happens by publishing it. So how are you going to negotiate with an editor? How are you going to compromise on the craft so that your writing actually makes it into print and people read it?
And breaking that down to more of a specific, what do you hope that your students gain or take away from your class?
I hope that they would end this day-long class with a clear idea of how they might write a piece, whether it's a 400 or 500 word opinion piece that they would submit to their local newspaper, or whether it's an 80,000 word memoir recounting their childhood or something, that they would come out thinking like, uh, I have an idea for a way to write in which I am personally invested and implicated in the narrative, and then to start to figure out what medium that's going to be, and to be able to walk down that path. So some, kind of challenge and inspiration. As I said, every time I teach at whatever level, in whatever topic, I'm always trying to bring up that balance of inspiration and challenge to students.
You mentioned before that you don't see a lot of this first person writing that you're teaching in areas that you're really interested in. And so I'm curious, as someone who has been interested in a lot of things and spent their time doing a lot of different activities, how have the literary arts really resonated with you in these different aspects of your life?
I think that's a good question. It's going to cause me to go like a little bit existential on you. The literary arts, as I get older, I feel more and more drawn to writing and reading. I find I spend, especially during COVID, I've spent so much. I said this to my son the other day. My youngest kid is in high school, and he got home, and I was reading a book, and he said, like, "Oh, I gotta, I don't have much homework tonight, so I'm gonna go to the gym and lift." And I said, "You should read a book. Why don't you read a book when you get home?" And he said, "All I do is read and write, Dad." And I'm like, "No, no, no. All I do is read and write." I'm like, "Son, I got up at 4:30 this morning and started writing, and now I'm reading. And other than walking the dog, that's all I've done all day." So I'm just so drawn to it. I've found it incredibly life-giving during the pandemic. Um, Reading the words of others, and then, just sitting down every single day for the last year during the pandemic and just writing. I've written finished my memoir, I've written a novel, and I've just in the last couple of days started a sequel to that novel. So yeah, I don't know what to say other than I love it.
So, as our final question, just getting to know a little bit more about you and your writing. You mentioned a memoir and a novel and a sequel as projects you're working on, but what are the goals that you have for your writing?
Well, I have different goals, and it all depends. Like, I, like this week, I've written three art in addition to working on the novel and revising the last novel. I've also been working on three deadline assignments for three different periodicals, and each of these things I would say I have different goals for. So the novel is just because I absolutely love it, and I've it's been the biggest challenge of my literary career is writing fiction. I've been scared of it for 30 years, and I finally like dove in the last couple years and did it. Um, the articles, I'm writing in some ways to make money because all three of them are paid. Also to because I'm choosing what journals to have my byline show up in. So I continue to try to establish myself in the outdoor writing world. So all three of those articles are for three different outdoors publications. Um, so the goal of each piece is unique to itself, although they hopefully all fit into a larger kind of ecosystem of my literary career that I continue to try to build.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. For all of our viewers, you can find Tony's classes as well as our full winter spring lineup by visiting loft.org/classes. Again, Tony, thank you. I'm really looking forward to your class. I think it sounds really, really interesting.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.